All right, so I've got a quick market update for you for the city of Edmonton and the greater Edmonton area using the most recent statistics available from the Realtors Association of Edmonton, which is the statistics from June 2022. So this is your July real estate market update. I'll have another one coming out probably next week that'll go even more in depth, but this one will go through the graphics that are provided by the Realtors Association of Edmonton. So let's take a look. First off, we're going to start with the greater Edmonton area. The average price in June for all residential was $405,000, which was actually down 1.2% from last month and up 1.8% from last year. The median sales price, on the other hand, was sitting at $385,000. That's that mid price point number. 50% of homes sold above that, 50% of homes sold below that. And that was down 1.9% from last month and up 3.8% from last year. Now, if we look just at single family homes, the average for the month was $494,000, which was up 0.3% from last month and up 4.5% from last year. Whereas the median was sitting at $455,000, which was a 0% change month over month, but up 7.1% year over year. So single family homes are still up pretty significantly year over year, but the growth has obviously stopped for single family homes, or it's pretty balanced and flat right now. If you look at condos, the average price was $238,000, which was down 0.3% month over month and down 1.6% year over year. So condos have lost a little bit of value from an average price point perspective. If we look at the median sales price for condos, it was sitting at $221,000, which was up 0.5% month over month, but still down 0.9% year over year. Now, if we go and look at duplexes and row house properties, the average was sitting at $388,000, which was down 2% from last month, but up 9.1% from last year. And the median was sitting at $378,000, which was down 1.6% from last month and up 10.7% from last year. Now, if we look at the number of new listings, there was 4,319 listings in June, which is a decrease of 5.7% from last month. So we don't have quite as many properties coming on the market as we did in May. And year to date, we've had 23,000 listings so far, which is still up for the year. It's up 4.1%. So this time last year, we had 4.1% less listings in total for the year. Now, if we go and look at the sales volume, this is the number of actual homes that are selling. There was 2,593 sales in the greater Edmonton area, which, just to fill you in, that includes Edmonton and all the surrounding communities. The next page we'll look at is going to be just for Edmonton, but this actually includes like the whole sort of area outside of Edmonton as well. So it'll be a bit different for just Edmonton, which we'll get to next. But you can see the sales volume is down 9% from last month, so we're seeing a little bit more slowing in the market. And we've got 15,000 sales for the year, which is actually down 4.6% year over year, which is interesting. Last year was definitely a very strong year, but this year we started so strong. It's surprising to see that we're now have less sales volume for the year so far compared to what we had last year. So we started the year super strong, but then it sort of started to slow down a little earlier this year, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Current inventory at the end of June was sitting at 8,057 in the greater Edmonton area. If we look at the high roller sales, the highest single family home sale was $2,055,000. There was a condo that sold for $1,555,000 and a duplex row house that sold for $1,240,000. Now, if we look at the average days on market for this year, we were sitting at 27 days for single family homes versus 28 days last year, 45 days for condos versus 53 last year, 29 days for duplexes versus 32 last year. And if you look at the market as a whole, we're sitting at 32 days on average compared to 35 last year. So still performing in terms of selling quicker than we did last year, generally speaking. Now, if we look at the same group of statistics, but this time just for the city of Edmonton, this is going to be a little bit more relevant to you if you're looking in the city of Edmonton versus just in the general area. And before we jump into that, I do want to remind you that I can give you even more specific advice and guidance based on your unique situation. I am a licensed realtor here in Edmonton with Yeg Pro Realty, and I'd be happy to help you whether you're buying or selling a home in Edmonton or any of the surrounding areas. You can just reach out to me at 780-819-5508. You can either text me or call me at that number, or you can go to booktrevornow.com. select a time on my calendar, and then we'll set up a free strategy call where you can tell me a little bit about you and your situation, and I can give you some free guidance. So go to booktrevornow.com and select the time, and we'll talk sometime in the near future. All right, so let's keep going now with the city of Edmonton. The average price for the entire market was $402,000 in June, which was down 1.2% from last month, but still up 0.9% from last year. The median was sitting at $380,000, which was down 2% from last month, but up 4.1% from last year. Now, if we just look at the single family home side of things, the average price was sitting at $503,000, which was up 0.8% from last month, and up 2.7% from last year. And the median was sitting at $460,000, which was up 0.2% from last month and up 6.6% from last year. So interesting sort of statistic here, seeing that the year-over-year average is only up 2.7% for single family homes. Not quite as large as what you would expect. If you look at the median sitting at 6.6%, that's a bit of a bigger gain. Now, you always have to take these numbers with a grain of salt because they are averages or even the medians, and they're always going to swing a little bit based on where the sales volume is happening. And I do think since interest rates have been going up, we're starting to see more sales happening in those lower price points because that's more affordable for people, and that will start to drag down the average price as well as the median price. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you can take these percentages and apply it to your house and assume that'll be accurate. More than likely it'll be inaccurate. And so if you're looking for more guidance on that, make sure to reach out to me. Now, if we look at condos, the average price of a condo was $233,000, which was down 0.7% from last month and down 2.4% from last year. And the median price was at $213,000, which was down 1% from last month and down 3.2% from last year. So condos haven't been doing too good lately or for a while. Now, if we look at duplexes and row houses, the average price was sitting at $394,000, which was down 5.1% from last month, but up 9.3% from last year. And the median price was sitting at $380,000, which was down 4% from last month, but up 10.8% from last year. So even though on the duplexes and row houses you're seeing a significant change in the average and median prices, you're still up substantially from last year, even higher than what we saw in the single family homes. This could, again, there's not nearly as many sales in that category, so this could again be affected just by what's selling. If we've got some cheaper row houses that have been selling lately, that'll start to drag things down. Now, if we look at the number of new listings in Edmonton, there was 3,222 in the month of June, which was down 7.3% from last month. So the number of new listings coming on is starting to slow down. We're sitting at 17,000 new listings for the year, which is up 4.6% for the year. And if we go over to the sales volume, we had 1,832 sales in June, which was down 7.1% from last month. So it's basically in step with what we're seeing in the listings. You know, listings are down 7.3%, sales are down 7.1%. So they're kind of following each other, and it's still pretty balanced. Now, year to date, we had 11,000 sales, which is down 3.5% from last year. Active inventory at the end of the month was sitting at 6,419, and then the high roller prices are the same since they all happen in Edmonton. Now, if we look at the average days on market, single family homes this year were sitting at 29 days versus 29 days last year. Condos are sitting at 47 days versus 53 days last year. Duplexes at 29 days versus 33 days last year, and for the whole market it's sitting at 35 this year versus 37 last year, so a little bit quicker, but you know, still relatively close. Now, if we go and look at some MLS home price index information for the greater Edmonton area, so again, we're going back to the market as a whole, not just Edmonton, but all the surrounding communities and Edmonton. The benchmark price across the board was $417,000. Which was down just a little bit, 0.1% from last month, but up 8.3% from last year. This number gives you a better overall feel for how the market's actually performing compared to the average price or median price. So that's important to look at. Seeing it going down 0.1%, and if you look over at the benchmark price trend here, you can see that we got some big gains in February, March, and kind of petered off in April, and then we're kind of going sideways now. I do expect that this probably will start to trend down a little bit as we get into the fall, but I think prices will remain relatively stable going into the fall. Might be a bit of a dip once we get into the winter months when things are the slowest, and sometimes people, they want to get their home sold, they might have to be a little bit more flexible on their price because there's not as many buyers, especially if they're in a higher price point. But time will tell to see what we see next year. I'm really not sure what's going to happen next year. It depends on how the market responds to these increased interest rates and how much more interest rates go up. So far, Edmonton's been doing pretty good. Like, it definitely took some of the steam out of the market, and it wasn't crazy hot like it was before, as everybody was rushing to get those low interest rates in and purchase a home at a lower interest rate. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what happens next year as the effects of these higher interest rates really start to take hold on the market. I would probably suspect it won't be as robust next year as it was this year, so that would definitely surprise me. But I don't know if it's just going to be sort of a balanced market or if it could shift further and potentially a buyer's market next year. So even if that is the case, if you are looking at buying a house, that doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense to wait until next year. If you check out one of my other videos, I did one where I talked about buying a house now at today's interest rates versus waiting for the market to potentially drop, but then paying a higher interest rate. And it showed that even if the market dropped 10% with the numbers I used, you'd still potentially be better off buying now at a lower interest rate. So that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, maybe prices could maybe be better next year. But if the interest rates are up even more, you might actually be spending even more on a monthly basis than you would now at a higher price. So that's something to consider as well. Obviously, your situation's unique, and I can help you kind of weigh some of the pros and cons on timing with you. That's a couple of my thoughts on kind of what's going on with the market and what we might be able to expect next year. Now, let's look at the average price. So we talked about this on one of the older slides, but the average price for the whole market was $405,000. Like I said, it was down 1.2% from last month, but still up 1.8% from last year. And the median was sitting at $385,000, which was down 1.9% from last month, but up 3.8% from last year. Now, if we look at the benchmark prices, which again, these are the ones that I said are more accurate, but breaking it down into the single family home, the benchmark price for a single family home was $472,000, which is just down 0.2% from last month, so still relatively flat, and up 8.8% from last year. Apartments sitting at $192,000, up 0.9% from last month, and up 0.9% from last year. And the townhouses sitting at $256,000, which were up 0.6% from last month, and up 8% from last year. So you can see, obviously, single family homes and townhouses have done a lot better in the last year than apartments that are just barely up on the benchmark price. Now, if we go and look at the same thing for the city of Edmonton, the benchmark price for the city of Edmonton was $409,000, which was down 0.6% from last month and up 8.1% from last year. The benchmark price trend, you can see it basically follows the same thing, just slightly different numbers. Everything I said on the last slide about what I sort of could see happening next year applies to the city of Edmonton as well, not just the whole market. We already looked at average prices and median prices, so I'll skip over that, but let's just look at the benchmark prices for single family homes. And Edmonton was sitting at $479,000, which was down 0.7% from last month, so a little bit bigger difference there on single family homes than on the other one, where we were down only 0.2%. And then that's up still 8.5% from last year. Whereas apartments were sitting at $187,000 for the benchmark price, which was up 0.9% from last month and up 0.2% from last year. For townhouses, on the other hand, we had a benchmark price of $249,000, which was up 0.2% from last month and in total up 8.9% year over year. So from that perspective, the townhouses have actually done better over the course of the year. So that pretty much wraps it up for the stats looking at what we got from the Realtors Association of Edmonton. I'll have a more in-depth video coming out soon once my graphics are ready, where I get a little bit more granular than what we've got here from the Realtors Association of Edmonton. If you like this type of content and you want to stay up to date on the Edmonton real estate market, make sure to subscribe like this video and leave me a comment so I know that I'm giving you guys the type of information that you want and need. And of course, if you click over here, you can watch other videos just like this one in a playlist, and you can click here to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.